Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, for the protection as prescribed at section, I think it's 42. FinCEN says, he said it is issuing this advisory to alert financial institutions that certain foreign individuals are abusing the Citizenship by Investment program sponsored by the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis to obtain passports for the purpose of engaging in illicit financial activity. He goes on to say FinCEN believes that illicit actors are abusing this program to acquire St. Kitts and Nevis citizenship in order to mask the identity and geographic background. It was referring here to the decision of the Douglas administration to remove the country of birth field from our passport. And the FinCEN has concluded that that act provided the opportunity for what it describes as illicit actors to abuse our program by masking their identity and geographic background for the purpose of evading U.S. or international sanctions or engaging in other financial crimes. Put another way, the FinCEN Department of the U.S. in May 2014 was saying that it had concluded that the Douglas administration was engaged with a frolic with rogues, facilitating them, giving them a passport, one of only 3 countries in the world that has ever taken out the country of birth field. What good could that have done? Who would want to hide the identity? And why did the request of persons to hide their country of origin not become a cause of concern for the Douglas administration? Why not? They facilitated these people, these illicit actors, according to FinCEN, in engaging in financial crimes. And FinCEN went on further to say, it believes that several Iranian nationals designated by the Office of Foreign Assets Control have obtained passports issued by the Douglas-led administration. All this is in the report. And what was the consequence of that ill-advised act by the Douglas administration? Again, apart from the dishonor which one publication referred to. What was the heading again? Death before dishonor. You understand? Filthy dollars for the CBI program before the dishonoring of our country. That is what happened. The consequence of this was that in the financial marketplace, we got a black mark, a stain, because the U.S. government, the most powerful country in the world, said it had no confidence in the Denzel Douglas administration. It said to the world, warning them publicly, not only by diplomatic note, but publicly through an advisory. Publicly. All financial institutions. That is what the thing was about. And went further than that, you know, because the last letter from the Secretary of State in January to Denzel Douglas, then Prime Minister of the country, reminded him that the U.S. government had no confidence, no trust, no faith in him, and warned him regarding the due diligence with respect to the CPI program. Good point. Number 8 is very much alert. Having taken the decision that led to illicit actors parading with our passport, having come under pressure by the U.S. government they were forced to do a recall of passports. Some 17,000 passports. 17,000 passports had to be recalled because there was no country of birth field. No country of birth field. And our citizens in London, our citizens in the USA, our citizens in Canada and Dubai became a victim of an ill-conceived decision of a government that had lost its way and wanted to play the frolic of being among pariah nations. How many countries in the world had taken out the country of birth field? It is so basic. It is so basic that that ought not to have been done. And so Kerry wrote to him on the 9th of January 2015. We expect your government, this is the gentleman, John F. Kerry, writing to him, Secretary of State, second most powerful man after President Obama in the lineup. Second most powerful man internationally. And here is his warning to the Prime Minister then, now ex-Prime Minister. We expect your government to refrain from issuing any type of citizenship document to individuals under this program. We expect your government to refrain from issuing any type of citizenship document to individuals under this program. This was January 9th, 2015. A clear warning. Loss of trust, a deficit of trust in the Denzil Douglas administration being expressed time and time again by the US government. We warned you. No wonder when I got into the office after the 4 morning escapade, I find cartoon of boxes of citizenship program because he took the warning for all his machoism. He understood that John Kerry,
I rise on a point of order.
What is the point?
It is very clear that he's misleading the House. If he found citizenships applications which were unsigned, it was not because of any warning. I want to make that very, very clear. So he's misleading the House.
Mr. Speaker, if I may continue.
He's misleading the House.
If I may continue.
And he's doing it deliberately because he's not completing the reading of the letter.
The letter
of State. Nobody in the state can tell me I can't issue citizenship.
Well, why you
so he should continue reading the letter.
Why you didn't issue them?
Reading the letter. That's what he needs to do.
No, you're not.
Because he's misleading the House.
Yes.
I know exactly what the letter said.
No, he can't continue.
The Honorable Prime Minister is reading from a letter written by the Secretary of State.
John F. Kennedy.
That is correct.
Yes. My only difficulty is the member when he said he, which I take to mean the Honorable Member for number 6.
Yes.
And I would prefer if the Honorable presenter would
Member for number 6.
or the
ex-Prime Minister.
Or the government, so that,
yes,
because then you'll be free to come to that conclusion,
yes,
that you're making,
yes,
rather than specifically, yes, pointing out it's the doing, yes, of the
when I consulted with the head of the citizenship unit, Ms. Sherilyn Maynard, that was the explanation that she gave me, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker,
but I would move on.
Correct.
Honourable Member for number 6.
On a point of order, again I rise because he is misleading the House.
Honourable Member for number 6, that point of order you're trying to raise is not allowed. The Honourable Mover or presenter is speaking to a conversation he had, I suspect, with some senior officer. That is his account.
Is he saying that the senior officer told him that?
Yes.
Yes, that's what he said.
Right?
Yes.
He's claiming things.
Yes.
I would have liked to see the proof of that.
No. He is saying that.
But I believe that he's
Honorable
misleading the
member for
House.
number 6.
Yes.
Please.
I think
Honorable Prime Minister is speaking to a conversation he had with a senior officer, and he's indicating that is what was said to him. You are not in a position to speak to that
he's saying that
conversation.
Miss Maynard, Mrs. Sheridan Pemberton told him that. That is what he's saying.
Continue, Honorable Prime Minister.
All right.
Yes. It wouldn't be unusual that a minister coming into office will call upon heads of department to come and do a briefing. I did that with all of them, the financial secretary, the controller of customs, all of them. Tafrida Rochester, the PS, all of them had to come in and give me a briefing. The CIU was a critical element of our platform. I called Miss Maynard in on several occasions, engage her, and she would say, you don't know how much pressure I was under. She said, sometimes I hear we're not approving things. Mr. Edmead came, stood over her and ensured she signed.
That cannot be allowed.
She said,
Member for number.
I was head of that administration. He is lying.
Okay, the same applies to you now, right? Earlier, I indicated to the senator opposite that when I'm speaking, please fall silent. Do not
I
cut
will
across
sit.
what I'm saying.
I will sit.
The Honorable Prime Minister is speaking to specific instances where he has had conversation with staff. It is his right. He is saying that is what was said to him. Yes. I am saying to you, you're not in a position to contradict that or refute that. So you cannot raise on a point of order on that account. Continue, Honorable Member.
But it is not the right call for a member of the
in fact, Mr. Speaker, in fact, I have here a series of correspondence which would have come from the head of the CIU. One of them, with all that was going on, I wasn't even aware that the former administration had a major fallout with Henley and Partners, that they had terminated the agreement in 2013, that Henley and Partners threatened to take them to court over the CIU matters, that the government ended up paying over $4 million.
What? I write again on a point.
$4 million.
The government paid nothing for Henley and
$4 million.
Partners. Leading the House, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable Member for number 6, I do not consider that a point of order.
Thank you.
Mr. Speaker,
He has not said anything that...
He said Henley and Partners was paid by the government.
Yes.
It is not true.
Honorable Member for number 6. Honorable Member for number 6. Let me... The right of reply. Under the right of reply, the presenter, the person who's doing that right of reply, has the right to defend his government or any criticism that was leveled at his government during the presentation.
Even if it is not true.
If anything he says I consider it to be in breach of any of the standing orders, I would address it. But this now is a direct response and defense of his government. It is not throwing any aspersions against you or not you personally. Because what will happen, honorable member? If you're going to try to rise on every point of order, that is a criticism of the past government. Where would that leave us?
No, it's
he
not that, Mr.
has
Speaker.
no.
No,
It is not directed against you personally.
Yes.
It's directed against
I
the
was
government.
the Minister of Finance and the head of the government.
Well-
You said that the government paid Henley and Partners $4 million. I am saying that is not true. That's what I'm saying.
Honorable-
The government paid Henley and Partners nothing.
Honorable member, I do not consider that to fall within the category of a point of order.
It is misleading the House. He's he's lying.
Well, then if you are clear on what he said, bring it back to this house as a substantive motion rather, and we will deal with it. I cannot allow you on everything the Prime Minister says
But he's lying. He's lying to the House.
I cannot continue, Honourable Member.
What the heck is this?
Termination of agreement between government and Henley and Partners. The agreement between the government and Henley and Partners was terminated on the 11th of August 2013, and Henley and Partners were to be paid in accordance with the instruction received from Cabinet Secretary Mr. Joseph Llewellyn Edmeade. Kindly prepare a check in the sum of $1.5 million multiplied by 2.71. That is what Henley and Partners were paid. This is Cheryl Ann writing to the finance officer, a contract between the government. Here is a letter dated 14th January from Mr. Edmeade directing her to proceed. You will recall that the government terminated its agreement with Henley and Partners on the 11th of August 2013. And she said, I am therefore directing, said Mr. Edmeade, that Henley and Partner would pay US $1.5 million as full and final payment pursuant to the agreement. The termination agreement releases, according to Edmeade, the termination agreement releases the government, that is the Denzil Douglas administration, from any further obligation to Henley and Partners. $4 million just before the election, poof away like the national debt. That is what this amount to. $4 million, and taxpayers were not informed regarding this particular matter. No wonder, having gone that way, Henley and Partners would write to me on the 12th of March. They say, dear Prime Minister Harris, we would like to congratulate you once again. They were joining the merriment of all proud Kidditians and Nivisians who were happy to see the back of the Douglas-led administration. We would like to congratulate you once again on your victory at the recent general elections. We view this election result as a very positive development. A very positive development, not the least because the country is in need of renewed leadership.
How does he feel?
That is what Henley and Partners were saying.
You don't hear him now?
No $4 million pass. And this is what he said, in spite of $4 million, Mr. Speaker. So that is where we are at in relation to that. But the situation got worse, Mr. Speaker. Situation got worse in relation to the CBI. Some 6 months after, the most powerful country in the world has issued an advisory warning people that the former administration was involved with this frolic with rogues who they said were using our passport to mask the identity, and the world should stay away from that program. The Canadian government in November exacted a penalty on St. Kitts and Nevis. What was the penalty? No visa, free access to Canada. Something that had been useful not only to born here nationals of St. Kitts and Nevis, something that had existed long before the honorable member for number 6 came to office in 1989. And you tell me that during his tenure having regard to the vitality and the importance of the relationship between St. Kitts and Nevis and Canada under his watch, the member for number 6 would stand idly by and allow us to use not that which he had given us, that which he met there. He took away from the citizen their ability to buy a ticket tomorrow, one stage of flight, and go to Canada. No application, no visa fees, no lot of questions about father and mother, and whether you have a bank account. Going to Canada was as easy as going to St. Martin or Antigua or Barbados or any CARICOM member state. And the maladministration of the government, headed then by the member for number 6, put the country in a situation where we lost favor. Lost favor with the 2 most important countries in the hemisphere. The 2 most important countries economically and from a policy point of view of international relations are the United States of America and Canada. And in the same year, 6 months apart, we got a double whammy. And it hurts. And it continues to hurt our people. I recall when Ambassador Brown was going off, before she was appointed our ambassador, she could not get her visa to go to Canada. She could not. My financial secretary was to go on an official business to Canada. She could not get her visa issued in time because of the bureaucratic hurdle. She told me, Prime Minister, this is too much. Too much. Too much. We have suffered, continue to suffer, because of the maladministration of an administration that was too long in government, and therefore heeded no advice. And what was the consequence of that also for the CBI, noted to in Article 4 of the IMF report, which they read selectively? Canada was one of the most attractive destinations for those who were subscribing to our program. So clearly, you lost that. You become less attractive to those who even didn't have it. Because this was one of the things that gave you a branding above the others. You lost. You lost. The others must of necessity gain. You lost. There is no way. When it is that Digicel came into the market of St. Kitts and Nevis, Lime lost. Digicel gain. Lime lost, Digicel gain by the entry of a new person into the market. That is how it is in the free market. If you close down and another shop open, you lost the business. The other one gained. St. Kitts lost what it had, access to Canada, reducing its competitive advantage relative to other CBIs. That was the legacy that they had. And not only were they pariah in financial management, pariah in the eyes of the 2 most powerful countries in the world. Cuba survived the blockade and embargo at a terrible price to its people. When I went to Cuba first, and I saw the roads and I saw the car, it was 2 emotions. The extreme poverty and indigence reflected, and the creativity when the gentleman said he driving that taxi for 40 years. 40 years? People holding cars so long. But when you are in a situation of economic blockade, you can't do much. You have to become a genius at repairing and repairing. You can't do any other thing. You have to become an expert mechanic. And the international community showed disdain for the administration that was. Henley and partners were right. Henley and partners were very right. We view this election result as a very positive development, not least because the country of St. Kitts and Nevis, according to Henley and partners, who was the architect of the revival of the citizenship program, St. Kitts and Nevis needed renewed leadership. It needed to let go from the Douglas administration. The American government, by that FinCEN warning, May 20th, 2014, was saying to the world, we have no confidence, no trust, no credibility that administration had with us. And that is why we went to the world. Indeed, when the press secretary attempted to respond and to further indicate that the U.S. had something to do, the U.S. government took an unprecedented, made another statement and demanded a retraction from Erasmus Williams of the false statement he had issued via press release. And he went back and he withdrew the statement because they recognize here was Secretary of State warning you in his letter. Here was the world aghast that a callous and irresponsible government in the Caribbean could become the subject of a FinCEN advisory. And then they wouldn't listen. Election in the air. Motion of no confidence in the air. So all on their mind is preparation for the election. I have in my hand a memo presented by a member opposite looking at scenarios for the election. And in it he said that we will have to go through the election by latest mid-2014. I have in my hand and in my possession all the polls that were done constituency by constituency in preparation for this election. But tide never seemed to favor them. But look at it. Government to government is the heartbeat of normal diplomacy. And the last administration reached to a position that they could not even talk to the governments. Or put it another way, other governments didn't want to hear them. And the Canadian government did not want to hear them after, of course, we had the fiasco of Al Jazeera, Mogadam. And I will read beforehand the letter that Ed Mead again wrote to Vic Dizen, asking him, by and large, to intervene on behalf of the government of St. Kitts and Nevis with the government of Canada. They couldn't do it themselves. Because after Al Jazeera, Mogadam pulled out that diplomatic passport and had the audacity to say he's going to see Prime Minister Harper, it was a scandal of tremendous international.
That's the meaning of the passport?
Yes. No appointment. Prime Minister of Canada wasn't like the Prime Minister of yesteryear. You can't just walk in so at airport. What is your business here, sir? I'm going to see Prime Minister Harper. Not how it worked.
Who sent you?
Who sent you? And Mogadam, I saw Mogadam once over at Karambola Hotel. That man Mogadam, he's not an easy man. Out of his place, forward. The day in which he got his passport, there was a function over at Karambola Hotel. Mogadam sat beside the Governor General. Karambola restaurant. I had a conversation some years after with Arthur Sharp. Arthur Sharp said, that man I know, he was going to get the Douglas administration in trouble. He said he came over here and he bought bouquets of flowers and is pushing himself forward. He has bouquets of flowers to give to the wife of the Governor General. And I had to tell him that is not how it's done. Not at Karambola restaurant. That is not how it is done. But we go back to the fundamental point that they could not have a conversation with the Canadian government. They were asking Vic Dizenne, telling Vic Dizenne what a significant impact the withdrawal of the Canadian visa-free access had, and they needed an intermediary. That was a government whose time had come, Mr. Speaker. But it got worse. Oh, we left it good. Oh, it's team unity. It's not us. When they left it in ICU, they left it choked to death. They left it as a program that had become the pariah. They left it as a program that had been sanctioned by the US government. They left it as a program to which the Canadian government had withdrawn its support, and in a sense punished the innocent people of St. Kitts and Nevis. They got somebody called GS Global Political Solutions. Global Political Solutions was charged to come into the country, do a lot of work on the CBI program. And according to Global Political Solutions, you know how much they paid them? They paid Global Political Solutions $122,354.10. Half price. And the fees of a program that wasn't damaged. It wasn't damaged. But the government of the day on the 21st of January 2015, according to the records of the Accountant General, paid Global Political Solutions by way of wire transfer payment the sum of $122,354.10. 50% US. Perhaps it wasn't the government. Perhaps it wasn't the government. It was the people's money that was being paid willy-nilly while they gave the appearance that nothing was wrong with the program. Again, when I spoke to Sherilyn Maynard regarding this, why did we pay so much money to GPS, Global Political Solutions? She said, I never met them. She told me, in the presence of the cabinet secretary, she never met the people for Global Political Solutions. Mrs. Maynard, Sherilyn Maynard, was then the head of the Citizenship by Investment Program. Sister of a member for number 3. So this is the invoice here. Aunt, sorry. Thanks for the correction. You all are alive and well. It reflects. Invoice, professional consulting service, citizenship program, and it goes through the details. What I will do, I'll make them available to the public and for greater public scrutiny. A full package. So the program, by their very actions and by the actions of others, was bruised, battered. In CIU, could not survive another term of the Douglas-led administration. And that is why Henley and Partners, the man who he paid, who the Douglas administration paid nigh $4 million, and the heat in the cups of the election fever. 14th of January, the cabinet secretary giving a direction to Sherilyn Maynard Pemberton, head of the Citizenship by Investment Unit, directing you to pay this sum. And I have the check here, and I have her response to the finance lady saying what Ed Mead had directed her to do. She had a discomfort with it, and that is reflected in the communication. Again, we make that available.
I remember for clarification, did you say you have a copy of the check?
Yes, I do. I do. Anything that goes to the Treasury in the end.
The government check?
Government check, of course. But everything was between the government and the institution. It was released in the government. But we go back to that another day. Global Political Solutions said they sent a Dan Tripp and a Jamie Brazil on the go. And interestingly, one of their work while here was to do focus group work. Elections coming. Do focus group work.
Elections.
$122,000. The head of the unit reported that she never met with the gentleman. And yet the government, yes, but they wanted the program. But here in his report, here in part, what Global Political Solutions was saying, since 1984, the government of St. Kitts and Nevis has operated a best practice model Citizenship by Investment Unit. Recently, the program has come under scrutiny by the United States and Canada. Altogether and respectively, the two countries have advanced claims that the Douglas government of St. Kitts and Nevis has been complicit at worst and negligent at best in the management and administration of the Citizenship by Investment program. The results of these claims have led the United States government to the Treasury Department to issue an advisory against the program, while Canada has implemented new policy measures now requiring all St. Kitts and Nevis citizens to have an entry visa. The actions taken by the United States and Canada must be addressed swiftly. You hear the warning again? Program in trouble. Their own advisor, whom they brought into the country just before the elections, paid $122,000, 50% down on its fees, warned them that action had to be taken swiftly and deliberately before any additional counterproductive actions are taken by the two countries. In other words, the US can do worse, and Canada can do worse, or the EU member states, most notably the UK, France, and Germany. That is what it has come to. You understand? The program had been bruised, battered, locked up in ICU, and nobody dared to attend to it.
UK was threatening us too.
And the UK was threatening us, and the EU was threatening us. And so Global Political Solutions told them that you had to run quickly and do something decisively. That was the state of the program that we inherited. We moved quickly, brought in the professionals, reorganized, repositioned the program, and set it to work again, branding it as our platinum standard so that it could move forward. Distancing it from that period, calamitous period, when its reputation was damaged by the sins of omission and commission of the Douglas administration. That is what that is. And we are happy that the EU has brought no sanctions against St. Kitts. The UK has not brought any. The US government, that Global Political Solutions, told the former administration could and would do worse, is working with us to resolve the issues and challenges. And we appreciate that it will take time. It will take time because the trust, once lost, takes time to rebuild again. The trust in the program was lost under the Douglas administration by the two most powerful countries in our hemisphere. And we have to work with them carefully moving forward to salvage the program for the benefit of the people. I want to thank Minister Mark Brantley, our High Commissioner in the Canada, Ottawa, and all the other people who have been working with us to bring a resolution to this matter. Thank them for their solidarity with this government, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we heard in the distraction, which was the response to the budget, issues about promotion of businesses. We heard the member for number 1 and the senator himself address the issue of the duty-free granted to him to build a house in Bird Rock. He told this honorable house that he considered, I'm paraphrasing, that he was entitled to that duty-free concession granted to first-time home owners. He felt that he was entitled to have the benefit of a functionary of the government in CJ Walwyn come to the country, that the cabinet of the country could determine the perquisites to be accorded to CJ Walwyn as commissioner, that the cabinet of the country, knowing full well that the senator had a house built in part with support from the taxpayers, that CJ Walwyn could then make a determination that for him to be able to pay his mortgage, the housing allowance paid to him had to be higher than the salary paid to the commissioner before him. And for the record, none of the other commissioners, not Austin Williams, not Foy Nevis, had the benefit of housing allowance. All of them lived in their house. So you ask yourself, why would CJ Walwyn, a man of Kittitian roots, bedded here, and he liked to talk about all where he lived, he has property in Westpass there. Why was there a need for us, the taxpayers, to pay him a housing allowance so that the housing allowance ends back up in the hands of a senator?
Mr. Speaker, I rise on a point of order.
But we done went through that again. Why have we point of order?
Point of order.
So you repeated it for, and you know it's not true.
Yes, let's.
Mr. Speaker, the member who's addressing this House has set out to give members of this House and the public that this member of this House has been involved in some corrupt act.
I'm just saying.
I said in this House that there was a government policy to assist first-time home owners. Could I be allowed to complete?
No, I'm before you continue. So that means to hold. You have addressed that very matter
Yes.
previously.
Yes.
Could you hold, please?
I don't know why you guys-
That matter came up. You addressed it specifically. So now you're attempting to rehash it and address it. I would not allow that. Because,
Let me explain.
Honorable Member, no. Because if I allow that, this debate will never end. You've spoken to it. Honorable Senator, remember the warning I gave you earlier? You remember the warning I gave you earlier?
He doesn't want to.
That matter was raised earlier. You addressed it specifically. You laid out your position. The minister, the member is now doing his wrap up. He has a right to wrap up in the way he sees fit. I cannot allow this repetitious thing about, it's been dealt with already. And the only thing, and to take it, one last thing I would say, the only thing he has said that caught my ear was monies ended up in the hands of the senator.
Yes.
But the facts are, as I know it, exactly. So there's no controversy. Let's move on, please.
Mr. Speaker, he's addressing it the same way.
Speaker,
No,
I want to make the point.
I've made my ruling.
That the country paid a housing allowance to the tune of $258,377.19 for a property to accommodate CJ Walwyn. The said property in Bird Rock belongs to the senator opposite who got duty-free in relation to that particular property, Mr. Speaker. I want to make the point, but you can't as a minister be competing with other civil servants. In fact, he said, Mr. Speaker, he said when he rebutted, I think the member for number one, that he was about the 600 person. The truth is, Nigel Carty application reached the Ministry of Finance on the have the package here. 27th.
And did they get approval?
27th. You had two on the 1st and the 25th. Nigel Carty came in third. That's 600. First in the line.
That's not true.
First in the line, Mr. Speaker. And that information I have here, which I will share with you and will share with members of the public, because I have nothing taxpayers should know. First in the line, Mr. Speaker, to receive the concessions supported by government. How many times must the government pay one person? Pay them a salary, pay them a housing allowance, pay them allowance for their new house, give them duty-free concession and a house. And their explanation, Mr. Speaker, can't be, Mr. Speaker, the explanation can't be, Mr. Speaker, that, well, other people were getting it too. Being a minister is special and different. Being a minister accords him special privilege in decision making. Mr. Speaker, could you ask the senator? Being a minister meant he sat in the cabinet when the package, abnormal as it was in amounts, was approved for CJ Walwyn. Abnormal. The housing allowance granted to CJ Walwyn was greater than the salary of the previous holder of the office. And beyond that, And beyond that, the previous holder had no housing allowance. And beyond that, City Walwyn utilized government funds to do repairs and renovations to the house at Birdrock. Would those renovations and upgrade be come back to the public, or should we send the police to collect them? That is what we are talking about. You can't put yourself with the ordinary civil servant. Cannot do that.
In the house.
Cannot do that.
Double dipped.
Cannot do that, man. And that is what we are talking about, Mr. Speaker. And you know, part of why the senator could have done that in the government was because he had example.
Yes, yes.
He had the example of the member for number 6 who rented the property at 5 Ways to the Taiwanese embassy and collected $3.24 million. $3.24 million. And I have documentation in relation to that. That is how it is. That is how it is. You ask yourself, why? Why? What vanity? What vanity of leadership that an embassy comes into the country. The officials needed somewhere to live. No bidding, no open tender in relation to the property. And the member for number 6 ends up benefiting $3.24 million.
It is the point of order.
Something is wrong
Mr. Speaker,
with that.
the member is attempting to mislead this House into thinking that I did something that was improper. The Taiwanese ambassador approached me, Denzel Douglas, through my agent,
Who was your agent?
asking that I rebuild my property because he was interested in the location and he wanted to be at that spot. Mr. Speaker, again I emphasize, custom bill, I'm glad you're saying that. Custom bill because that is what he requested. I did not approach anybody. I went to the bank. I borrowed $2 million. I am still paying for it. What duty free? Know your place about duty free. You think I'm like you? Know your place. Know your place. Oh, duty free. You know your place with me. I borrowed money from the bank, $2 million. I am still paying that mortgage. With your forwardness. I can rent my house to anybody I feel like. Doesn't know your place. You took $1 million of taxpayers' money and upgrade your own house, your private property. That's what you did.
Laugh at the calamity.
Your own,
Laugh at the calamity.
your own private
Mr.
home.
Speaker, would you allow me to
$1 million of taxpayers' money.
3.24.
That's what you did.
Order.
Know your place with me.
Honorable member for number 6, I gave you an opportunity to have your say with respect to the honorable member for number 6.
Yes.
It's unfortunate because I gave you an opportunity to have your say with respect to this property that was at
all over the place.
but you deviated into something totally different, which
Because he's accusing me of having duty free as well. I have to respond to that.
continue, honorable member for number 7.
The duty-free matter will be addressed. The duty-free matter in relation to that particular, all the documents are being amassed as we speak. It's unfortunate that I didn't get them last night, as was promised, Mr. Speaker. So I won't go there. The member for number 8 asked a question, which is a pertinent one. Did the beneficiary of the leasing of the property at 5 Ways, who is the Minister of Finance, was then, and chair of the cabinet, did that property receive duty-free concession? We know it is not contested that the property for the senator opposite receive duty-free concession. We know that. That matter I will address at a later date. And there are other properties too. Other properties. And those will be addressed. So that is where we are at. I am happy to hear the member says, well, my property cost 2 million. I've already gotten 3.24 million. Leasing. And you ask yourself, was it advisable? Does it look good? For the Prime Minister, we know Taiwan. Taiwan has about 20 plus countries. The ambassador of Taiwan can't come to St. Kitts and Nevis and have an antagonistic relationship with the government. The government must give it its space. And indeed, the further fact, last year, when the ambassador spoke with the member for number 6 regarding that lease of the property, the member for number 6 threatened the ambassador that the ambassador should not ask him to leave. He said to the ambassador, what's that, you didn't hear? Oh, all right, you'll get another chance. We will talk about it down by Ram Barrel.
He said that I threatened the ambassador?
Mr. Speaker,
That is what he just said?
I am moving on.
Mr. Speaker, he has to take that back.
Mr. Speaker,
I didn't threaten any
Mr.
ambassador.
Mr.
Can he making
Speaker,
those statements here?
Mr. Speaker, I'm moving on.
Mr. Speaker, he cannot
You
make
didn't-
those
You
statements
didn't
here.
hear?
Let me rule, please.
Did you hear what he said?
I heard what he said.
Honorable member from number 7, could you kindly withdraw the use of the word threaten the ambassador?
Speaker, I'm using the precise word spoken to me by the ambassador. The ambassador, when I asked, because I had spoken to the ambassador about the lease. Could you have a seat? About the lease of that property to the member for number 6, which was offensive in my view. And the ambassador had given a time frame by which the government had already taken a decision to exit the private property of the member for number 6 at 5 ways. And when that date had come, I had reason to meet with the ambassador, and that matter came up. And the ambassador said to me in the presence of a functionary of the government that he was threatened. I said, what do you mean? He said the member for number 6 told him that this will bring a break in the relationship with his government. He told me.
Are you raising on a point of order?
Yes, Mr. Speaker.
Before you do so, I think the member was completing something. Let's hear it. Then I may consider your point of order.
The ambassador told me, Mr. Speaker, that when he met with the member for number 6, it was a frightening experience because the member told him that this can't happen. He will not accept it. That there were some damages, certain places in the house, and he will have to forfeit this and forfeit that and so on. I tell him, listen, you can't let the mouth of the member for number 6 frighten you.
That's only you.
You deal with governments. And he told me that the compromise reached with the member for number 6 was that he will give him a further extension of about 6 months. You know he exited your property this year. He had served notice and knew that he would have left last year as a result of the confrontation. And he felt pressured. He agreed to go on with the property for a further 6 months. And I have a copy of the extension of the agreement. That is what had happened.
How much long explanation he gives. The
It's
fact
true.
is that he said, hearsay, that I threatened the ambassador, and I cannot accept that.
Well, you could not.
Because it means he can come into this house anytime and say somebody tell him something. That is not acceptable in this house.
Number 6.
I understand the presenter to be saying he had a conversation with the ambassador, and that is what the ambassador said to him. Your protest.
threatened the ambassador.
No, I didn't understand it to be
That's
that.
what he said first, Mr. Speaker. That's not what he said.
Well,
He said, I threatened the ambassador. He said, you threatened the ambassador.
Honorable
That's
member,
what he said.
could you relax?
I mean, this cannot be right.
Honorable member for number 6.
Yes.
I'm about to rule. Right?
This cannot be right.
Earlier I said I heard the words threaten the ambassador. I asked the presenter to withdraw. He then said that, or clarified what he was saying by saying, having spoken to the ambassador, that was his understanding. That's what the ambassador said to him. You have risen and said that
I did not.
that you threatened or did not threaten. So you're protesting use of what he said,
Yes.
but it's recorded.
What is recorded?
Because he's saying what the ambassador said to him. But your protest.
I threatened the ambassador as a result of what the ambassador said to him. He cannot make that statement.
I was reporting what the ambassador
No, you did not. As a result of that conversation,
Honorable
he said,
member.
I threatened the ambassador.
No, you
And I'm not taking that.
You misunderstood.
Order.
I misunderstand what I said.
The position
What
of
nonsense you're talking about?
order. The
You know
position.
exactly what you said.
I am speaking, please. I'm speaking. The position of the chair is that the presenter is reporting something that was said to him by someone, the ambassador. You are saying he used the word threatened. Your protest is noted. There's nothing else the speaker can do. Continue, honorable member. It is a settled matter. He's not accusing you. He's reporting something that was said to him. This is a settled matter. Continue,
Yes, thank you,
honorable member.
Mr. Speaker, for that protection. Mr. Speaker, I want to move on, Mr. Speaker, because I recognize it's an unsettling conversation. That is why you avoid these things. And sometimes you speak to somebody, you don't consider you're speaking rough, but for the other person it is rough. I believe that anybody listening to the member for number 6 all day would say that that man speak rough and frightening and not like a former statesman. So I could sympathize with him that he got himself in this pickle, and I could sympathize with the ambassador that the ambassador feared, Mr. Speaker, and reported that to me. I don't want to prolong that point, Mr. Speaker, because I had advised when we were in Taiwan, I advised Ed Mead, then Cabinet Secretary, that he ought to advise the member for number 6 from proceeding with renting his house to the Taiwanese. It just wasn't a good decision, but the results are now there to see. Mr. Speaker, there is the issue of promoting democracy, and my member, the Attorney General, outlined the deliberate undermining of democracy under the watch of the Denzil Douglas administration. He reported yesterday, Mr. Speaker, that in the old days of the Douglas administration, gone by and by, never to return, the streets of Church Street would have been blocked off. Army men would have been there. Policemen, customs would be there, brandishing their guns, Mr. Speaker, especially in the period when the motion of no confidence was before the Honorable House, and he would not bring that matter to the House. Mr. Speaker, I want the country to recall that on January 16, 2015, the Douglas administration, now the rejected administration, called an emergency meeting of the Parliament to do a routine exercise of changing boundaries. And it gave to members of the House 5 minutes notice. 5 minutes! 5 minutes! In fact, first time in the history of Parliament under the former administration, Parliament start on time. Parliament start on time when the member for number 6 has the record of being always late. Always late. When member for number 5 would remember, the member for Nevis 10 would remember, because the member for number 10 and the Attorney General and who was our other member? Those two were meeting the very day in a meeting of the Boundaries Committee, and the very day, less than a half an hour after the Boundaries Committee had met, Parliament called an emergency Parliament to deal with something that is routine in the democratic life. 5 minutes notice. We couldn't believe. And in this Parliament, look how fate would have it. Member for number 8 was on that side. Member for number 8 got thrown out. The Speaker then, in his mood, Speaker then, you are a gem of a Speaker in contrast to what was. Hold on, member for number 8. Not in here, you know, because I don't know you not like me. I don't know you that don't hear say you not like me. And the member for number 8 did not even get to speak. You told him, I remember, in one friendly exchange with Mr. Speaker, I've caused your road to be fixed. Why are you going on? Hold on. That was how Parliament was then. The undermine of democracy, and they prevented every member on the government bench from speaking. Yes, you understand? Member for number 6 lost his space. You know, that one incident lost him, lost the Douglas administration, the confidence and trust of people. When I canvass persons in East Pasteur, one of them was an economic citizen, and he said to me, I left where I had lived to come to St. Kitts to enjoy the democracy. Politics for me is like a hobby, he said. All he does, he liked to listen to Hard Talk and all those. That's a program on BBC. And he said when he saw and observed what was happening in the Parliament, he made up his mind that the Douglas administration had to go. They had undermined democracy. They had brought fear that the dictatorship was there. And somebody had to clip the wing of the dictator. Several labor households, when I canvassed them, said after what happened there, you are assured of my vote. Some families, never before you had to ask how they will vote. When I went, they welcomed me. They called me. I walk in the street. They said, I'm praying for you. Don't be afraid. I never feared. I never feared, because God is with me. It's twice Timothy in the Bible, 1st and 2nd Timothy. 1st and 2nd Timothy. Never feared. So they can't come now to chastise us about democracy when they left that legacy. For the first time in the history of parliamentary democracy, a motion was passed by the Douglas administration in the Parliament to bring an end to the parliamentary discussions, because they had a spy, as it were, telling them what was happening at the court in order to ensure that our lawyers could not get and move the court with the injunction, cut off everybody's speaking rights, and then come down to tell us that that report, which he read in less than a half an hour, was able to mobilize the Parliament in less than a half an hour rushed to the Parliament, got up to Springfield, was read by the Governor-General, signed off by the Governor-General, gazetted, so he could come to the steps of the government headquarters and said he outsmarted the opposition. Limor had a nice way of saying, one smart ducket's too smart at the door. He was too smart for himself. And so the Privy Council had him at the door, way up a gum tree, as we would say in local parlance. So he went to nomination day with the discredit, not knowing which boundary was the boundary that would subsist, because the court ruled that the two lists, I think it was, had to be made available at each polling booth.
Do you know what proclamation means?
That is why a lot of people have confidence in the Privy Council, because he was detached from all the complications of family and party affiliation. And he said, in his own way, but how far is the Governor-General's residence? So you mean you could get it there with that speed and get it back down with that speed? The Privy Council found something was fishy with our democracy. And in the heat of the elections, decision came in. I gather when the decision came in, there was silence and sadness at government headquarters. What they had planned for the country, through the intervention of God and man at the Privy Council, was overturned. The election, they came. The flights came from all over yonder, some 30 plus. I got the statistics from the air control people, all the planes, the numbers that came in. And as God would have it, some of the flights came late after 6. There was no help. And so I could understand with that background the extreme with which the former government went to, as it were, in a manner of speaking, steal the election and still didn't get it work. I could see why it has taken them such a long time to come to grips with the reality. I could understand after the election why a leader could go up to the airport and behave like a spoiled brat and said, I'm going to do something about it because they stopped me planes. They stopped me planes. I could understand why on the day I was to be sworn in, somebody could be in their constituency saying, well, I haven't resigned. They can't swear him in today. All those were the extremities to which men go when they become puffed up, arrogant, and distant from what is happening in the country. In my...
We have been going now for 2 hours. It's...
Well, if you need a break, I can't interfere with the judgment of the Speaker.
Yes, and it's not just me. Remember, we do have some folks who don't have the flexibility to move around like other members. So I want to propose a lunch break. We could do 45 minutes today.
How long do you recommend?
I'm suggesting it's 1:45. Could we resume 2:30, or do we need a full hour?
I have never challenged the direction and guidance of the Speaker.